and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. I hope you're all having a lovely Friday. This is going up on Friday. Today, being halfway through the year, over halfway through the year I think, halfway through the year, June 6th, halfway through the year, I'm going to be doing the mid-year freak-out tag. Again, my glasses are filthy, I'm leaving them off. This is a tag that I did for the first time last year. I really enjoyed doing it. It's sort of like a midway through the year check-in on your reading and things you might be looking forward to, etc, etc. I'm also going to be filming a best books of the year so far video, so some of the books that appear in here will also be appearing in that a bit later on. But yeah, I really enjoyed watching this, other people doing it. I've just watched April from Getting Hooger With It, her video, but yeah, I enjoyed filming it last year. I just enjoy it, all right? Shall I get on with it? So the first question is the most important question, which is the best book you've read so far in 2021. Now, I've read some pretty bloody good ones this year, but I literally finished this yesterday and I loved it. I loved it so, so much. And that's Severance by Ling Ma, which is, and bear with me when I say this, so this is, I've never read anything like this in terms of it being a coming of age novel about a girl called Candice who has lived sort of like the Chinese immigrant experience in terms of her parents coming over from China to America and setting up life there, and then her staying with her grandparents in China while this is happening, then coming over. Both of her parents die quite young, and she has to sort of like make a life and a family of her own in New York, and a lot of the book is embroiled in sort of like office politics. She gets a job working for a publisher and works in the Bible department, and there's a lot of sort of like detail going into her sourcing a particular type of paper that will be best for the Bible, or this particular gemstone that wants to go on a special anniversary edition of the Bible, etc, etc, etc. So all of that is going on, but this is interspersed, so that's sort of like monotony and things is interspersed with the fact that she is currently living in the middle of an apocalypse, a pandemic. There's a fever which they call Shen fever, which originated in the Shenzhen area of China, which has basically shut down the world, and people have become fevered and got unwell, and what happens with this is that it affects your brain, and it reduces you to what you have as sort of muscle memory. So people who maybe worked in a shop will, once they get Shen fever, and you don't know you've got it to begin with because it sort of presents as sort of like a bit of confusion or something like that, you'll just be reduced to just sort of like putting things on the shelves in the shop and just doing things that you have as muscle memory. So these people are called the Fevers. So it's essentially a sort of like bit of a zombie novel as well. I loved it. I thought it was so, so good, and the pacing of it was amazing. Like I said, these sort of like chapters of really intricate details about her job interspersed with like, oh, and then I was the only person in New York, so I decided to find a group of survivors, and like her on the road with these survivors who haven't got who haven't become fevered, and they don't know why they haven't. So I really loved it. I thought it was great, great, great. What I will say about things like this is that ordinarily if I read a book, I can sometimes think, oh, maybe that'll become one of my favourite books of the year, but like to read this and think, well, that was the best thing I've read this year, I really, really loved it. I would definitely, definitely, definitely recommend it. I could have started it again from the beginning as soon as I finished. Anyway, the next question is the best sequel you've read so far in 2021. I have read one sequel, so I've read 107 books this year so far, which is bloody good going, and loads more than I read last year. Both the similarity between this year and last year is that I didn't set myself a target, so I just sort of thought I'll get on with it, and turns out that's how I read loads more if I don't set myself a target. And the only sequel that I've read in the whole year is the sequel to 84 Charing Cross Road by Helene Hanff. Now this is actually included in this book, and it's called The Duchess of Bloomsbury Street. So the first book is, so this is a memoir from Helene, and the memoir is written in letters between herself, and she lives in America, and a bookshop in the UK during the 1940s, 50s and 60s, maybe even into the 70s, no 60s. It's very adorable and lovely, all about friendship and wonderfulness. And then the sequel, which is included in this copy, is documenting her eventual trip to London written in diary form, which I really, really enjoyed, but didn't enjoy as much as I enjoyed 84 Charing Cross Road. So yeah, that's the only and the best sequel that I've read in 2021. Number 3, new release you haven't read but want to. So I bought this earlier this week, and that's The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Delilah Harris, which I have heard her on so many podcasts at the moment. That's what's the good thing about listening to bookish podcasts, is that you sort of feel hyped about a book, and then that person seems to be doing sort of like a promo run in all of the podcasts you listen to, and then you get to really cement the fact that you really want to read this. So this, I'm hoping, is going to be everything Luster wasn't for me. I think when I picked up Luster, I thought it was going to be, well, I thought it was going to be what this blurb sounds like. So, 26-year-old editorial assistant Nella Rogers is tired of being the only black employee at Wagner Books. Fed up with the isolation and the microaggression, she's thrilled when Hazel starts working in the cubicle beside hers. They've only just started comparing natural hair care regimes, though, when a string of uncomfortable events causes Nella to become public enemy number 1 and Hazel the office darling. Then notes begin to appear on Nella's desk: leave Wagner now. It's hard to believe Hazel is behind these hostile messages, but as Nella starts to spiral and obsess over the sinister forces at play, she soon realises there's a lot more at stake than her career. Dark, funny and furiously entertaining, The Other Black Girl is a smart satire on race and the modern day workplace that will keep you guessing until the very last twist. So it sounds like a sort of like thriller almost. So yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to reading that. Oh, the end papers I've realised as well are braids, which is fantastic. So yeah, looking forward to reading that. And also, I don't actually know anything about this book, but I just read, so the book is Malibu Rising by, oh my God, what is the name of that author who wrote Daisy Jones and the Six? Taylor Jenkins Reid. That's her. Yeah, so I read Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and listened to the audio. I read it one year and then listened to the audiobook the next year, and just had such a good time with it. When I heard that there's a new book out by her this year, I've been quite excited, but I have seen mixed reviews, guys. So I've seen some people saying they really loved it, some people gave up on it. So I am intrigued by that. So yeah, that's a new release, but I want to read it. Next up is the most anticipated release for the second half of 2021. Now, you might notice if you've been here a while on my channel, is that I very, very rarely film books about upcoming releases and stuff. And it's because my finger's just not on the pulse with stuff like that, guys. I'm just not great at knowing what's coming out. If I hear something's coming out, I feel very, very hyped about it. And I was thinking, what am I actually excited about? And the only thing I could think, oh yeah, I'm quite looking forward to that coming out, and I don't even know if it's coming out this year because there's been no official announcement of it, is the third book in the Book of Dusk trilogy by Philip Pullman. So Philip Pullman is the author of his Dark Materials trilogy, a massive, big book that I read. Well, I didn't actually read it until I got to university, but like children's books, oh, so fantastic. I've reread the series so many times, and I'm currently nowadays listening to the audiobook of it because it's just so well done. It's got a full cast and it's wonderful. And then following that, Philip Pullman has now written sort of a trilogy of novels that run before the events in his Dark Materials, after the events in his Dark Materials, and I think so. The first book of Dusk was written before the events when Lyra was a baby, the main character in his Dark Materials, and then the second book was written when Lyra is in her 20s, so after the events, and then I believe this one, which hasn't even got a title yet, is about the events of like sort of like maybe running alongside. I don't know whose perspective it is. I don't know anything about it, and I don't even know if it's out this year. But what I will say is, when I looked into it just now, the first book of Dusk came out in October 2017. The second book of Dusk came out in October 2019. So everything sort of leads me to believe that it's coming out in October 2021. But yeah, there's been no announcement and I don't know anything about it. He had finished the series, so there's no reason it shouldn't come out. But yeah, so that one, I'm anticipating that. I am anticipating. I'm anticipating any information about it at all, really. Number 5 was the biggest disappointment, and I think this is definitely down to sort of personal taste, and I think it's also because I went in with such high hopes, and that's The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abby Dare, and I was really, really hyped for this book. I had the book in many, I'd been sent the proof of it, which I was so excited about when I received it, and I thought, oh yeah, I will read that. Never got round to it. David's mum bought it for me for Christmas. the year just gone, so I was like, I've definitely got to read it. And then my colleague listened to the audiobook of it and said it was one of the best audiobooks she'd ever listened to, so I was like, right, I'm going to listen to the audiobook of it, and I did. And I just didn't gel with it at all. You follow a Dooney, a young girl who wants to have a louding voice. She wants to educate herself. She wants to make something of herself, and that's what she does in her life. She gets herself an education, and like all of those things. When you say that, I think I would really, really love that, but I just didn't click with it ever. Again, the audiobook was really good. It's done by Adjoa Ando, who is Lady Danbury in Bridgerton, and just did nothing for me. I was just so disappointed with myself for not enjoying it more as well. So yeah, that was my biggest disappointment. Number 6 is The Biggest Surprise, and I've got 2 books for this, both of which were on the Women's Prize long list. One of which is another one of my favourite books that I've read this year, and that's Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. And I just don't think I imagined myself to be as sort of swept up in this as I would do. This isn't normally my type of reading experience, and I didn't know much going into it, so it really surprised me how much I enjoyed it. So you follow Piranesi, the main character, who is writing in a diary and is living in some sort of like grand hall situation, and Piranesi's keeping a diary, and Piranesi's, I was very endeared to Piranesi. They're quite unusual, and they write about the people that the other people that they've seen in this hall. They only meet up with one other person to talk about what they found in these massive sort of, yeah, I keep saying halls, but like it's almost, it's sort of like cavernous, like they've all got different names, and there's hundreds of them, and they're called different numbers based on what Piranesi has called them, and yeah, and then there's sort of like bodies and bones and things, and it's just bizarre. It's only a short little thing as well, and I just absolutely adored it. I was so swept up in it, and like I said, so endeared. That was a really, really big surprise for me, especially as I hadn't read anything by Susanna Clarke before, but the previous book that Susanna Clarke had written, I can't remember the name, but it's 2 men's names, Mr. Norrell and something. Anyway, it's absolutely massive, and I read Piranesi on my e-reader, so I didn't know how big it was, and then to sort of like have got through it so quickly, I thought, wow, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting it to be massive, as was the other one, Mr. Norrell and something, who knows. But yeah, that was one of my big surprises. And then the other one was Consent, which was also on the Women's Prize long list. I've forgotten the name of the person that does this, but there will be a picture either here or here of the front cover, and you'll be able to see. But yeah, so this was a book which I thought, and also based on the front cover, I thought was going to be all about sort of sexual consent, which it is in part about that, but the majority of it seems to be about sisters and about and I don't want to give any surprises away because there's 2 really big events that happen in it that also involve consent. So yeah, that took me by surprise as well. So those 2 books from the Women's Prize long list really were my biggest surprises. Favourite new author, and this is an author that I've read one of the books by, a cookbook in fact, and also was delighted to read this earlier this year, In the Kitchen, which is essays on food and life. And my favourite new author, and I just love her writing, is Ella Risbridger. So I read Midnight Chicken not so long ago, which is a cookbook, but also sort of serves as almost like a bit of a diary and maybe like a self-help book, and something very, very comforting. It's a cookbook with comforting recipes, and recipes that Ella can attribute to different times of her life, different mental health episodes, etc, etc. Like I said, the style of writing, I read it from cover to cover, and it's very rare that I read a book from cover to cover, but hearing about different episodes in her life and different memories that these recipes link to was just so warming and wholesome and was wonderful, combined with the fact that there's no pictures in this book in terms of photographs of food. There's drawings which are just gorgeous, and yeah, I read this on my e-reader and I definitely want to buy myself a copy. But also I read earlier in the year, In the Kitchen, Essays on Food and Life, which has an essay from Ella in it, and her one, what was it called? I'm trying to find it. Should have tabbed it really, shouldn't I? Because I've literally just re-looked at it just now. Here it is. It's called Cupboard Love. And if I can just read you this first bit that I really, really love. All my stories start in the kitchen, and all my days too. Fumbling for the kettle in my dressing gown, coffee in the grinder, eyes smudgy behind bleary glasses. I never remember really getting downstairs. I think I do it while I'm still asleep. I half tumble down the stairs and into the grey light of early morning. I put away from the dishes from the night before, stare at the cucumber plants, don't speak. I don't like to see anyone until I'm on my second cup. My fat mate, one of the great loves of my life, says that nobody has ever hated her the way I hate her in the first half hour of the day. And it's all about love in the kitchen. It's only a short little thing, but I absolutely loved it. So yeah, one of my favourite authors of the year so far. I've really been enjoying Ella Risbridger's writing. Newest Fictional Crush. Now, I had a similar problem with this last year. Turns out, I just don't really fancy people in books. I just don't. So what I've gone for is my newest fictional crush in terms of people I want to be my mates. So first of all, I've got Rainbow Milk by Paul Mendes, which is another one of the best books I've read this year. And the guy in here, Jesse, is a young black guy who is sort of, well, first of all, he lives in a Jehovah's Witness family, and hasn't even really considered the fact that he might be gay, just because that doesn't exist in his religion, where he's quite sort of revered, and they want to make him into a brother and things like that. Anyway, they find out that he's made like homosexual maybe comments towards another male member of the church, and they disfellowship him. So he moves to London and becomes a sex worker and lives in London and gets by and things like that. And you follow his early life, another coming of age story. And I just loved him. I loved everything about him. I thought his turn of phrase was lovely. I found him really funny. I loved the way he loved, and I loved the way he cared about things. And I just really liked him as a person. So yeah, I would like Jessie to be my friend, if possible. And then the other person I'd like to be my friend, which I guess this isn't fictional because Grace Dent is a real person. This is Grace Dent's memoir, Hungry. And I already knew I loved Grace Dent, but after I read this, and again, how funny she is, and I just think we'd laugh at the same things. I just think we'd get on. You know, when you just think for someone. I remember saying this before about Will Young after I read his book. I just think we'd get on. Now, I'm gonna hold on to this book because the next two questions are a book that made you cry and a book that made you happy. And this book did both of those things. As I said, this is a Grace Dent's memoir. Grace Dent is a food critic and restaurateur, also television personality in the UK. And this is her memoir told through food, which I love. I love books that include food. I love food fiction. I love non-fiction about food. I love leafing through a cookbook. So this is wonderful, and it sort of tells about all the comforting things she ate when she was growing up, and like foods that remind her of like her dad, or foods that remind her of when she first moved to London. And also the amazing meals she's had in some like of the amazing restaurants that she's been to. So I loved that, and it made me happy because that's the things I love to read, but also it made me sad and it made me cry, like actually when I was reading it, because you're also sort of documenting her dad's decline in terms of his in terms of the fact that he has dementia. Now, they don't even give him the diagnosis of dementia to begin with, which is just such hard going. Like, they're just trying to care for this person who is no longer the person that they always knew. And yeah, just such sort of like heart-wrenching things, and like her having to take time away from her seemingly glamorous life of going to some of the most beautiful restaurants in the world and reviewing them, to then having to go home and having to fight an elderly man back into bed, or to stop him trying to get out and drive the car in the middle of the night, or him shouting at her and things like that. And just, God, it just, yeah, I thought it was amazing. And like I said, just so many feelings during this: happiness, sadness, tears, laughter, tears of laughter and tears of sadness. I loved it. And yeah, I'll definitely be revisiting this. So many people said to me that the audio of this is amazing, so I look forward to reading that as well. The most beautiful book I've got in 2021, and this is beautiful both inside and out. Oh, excuse me. This is a book I received from the publisher, and this is the 25th anniversary, almost a 25th wedding anniversary, 25th anniversary edition of Bridget Jones's Diary. Look at those beautiful gold shiny pants on the front. Naked hardback, and not only are those gold shiny pants, look at all of these little shiny gold pants behind as well. I love gold foiling. I love Bridget Jones, so this was already like on my bestest books of ever, because Bridget Jones's Diary is one of my favourite books ever. But just to have a beautiful edition of it, because as my life has gone on, I've owned many editions of Bridget Jones's Diary. I've owned the film front cover until I've literally worn it to death, so it's coming out. I bought a copy in a charity shop with a different front cover. I think I left that behind when I was on holiday one year. Yeah, and then more recently I've got the 20th anniversary paperback editions, which were also beautiful, of Bridget Jones and the Edge of Reason, and then to have this, so yeah, beautiful for me in all sorts of reasons, because it's one of my faves. And then the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So I've got a few books that I need to read by the end of the year, and I guess that's because I'm taking part in the Reading Women Challenge, so I've filmed a video all about those books that I've still got to read for the end of the year, and I'll link that down below. But yeah, I've been really having a great time doing the Reading Women Challenge, and it's really led me to read some much more diverse books than I ordinarily, or just books that I wouldn't have even heard of. So yeah, so I have got some books, but I will link that all down below, because basically that's just me regurgitating the ones that I've already done. So that is the mid-year freakout tag. As always, enjoyed filming it. Let me know if you've done this mid-year freakout tag. I've linked all the questions down below, so even if you don't have a YouTube channel, do feel free to answer some of them in the comments. I'd love to have a chat about it, and I'll see you all again soon for another BookTube video. Bye!